People always say trust is the foundation of any marriage. Personally, I think it's more like an invisible tripwire. Works perfectly until it doesn't, and by the time you realize you've triggered it, half your life's already in flames. The morning it all started unraveling, I found her wedding ring in the fridge, tucked neatly beside the oat milk and her favorite vegan yogurt. Not lost. Not dropped. Just sitting there cold as hell, like it had decided to chill out and rethink its vows too. Now, that might not mean much to some people, but if you knew my wife, you'd know she never took that ring off. Not for showers. Not for yoga. Not even when she was gardening and swore it was cutting off her circulation. So finding it there, nestled beside her probiotic obsession, felt less like an accident and more like a silent declaration of war. She wasn't home at the time, of course. Work brunch, she'd said, even though it was Saturday and her boss was on a silent retreat in Sedona. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I just stood there, staring at that little symbol of eternal love parked beside dairy-free bacteria, and thought to myself, all right, let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. I made breakfast as usual, scrambled eggs, toast, and that overpriced jam she liked from the farmer's market she never invited me to anymore. When she came back 2 hours later, laughing at something on her phone, I placed the ring in her palm without saying a word. Her smile faltered. Just for a split second. Then she laughed, said, "Oh my God, I must have dropped it while making a smoothie." Smoothie. We didn't own a blender. That was the first crack, the first time her story didn't stitch back together. I watched her closely after that. I wasn't obvious about it. Hell, I was so good at playing dumb, I started to convince myself I actually was. I made her think I was busy. Work stress. Gym. Guys' night. But every hour I spent away from her, I spent learning. Patterns. Habits. The subtle shift in her perfume, less floral, more musky. The way she started locking her phone after years of leaving it on the counter. Her laundry smelled different too. It had a scent I didn't wear. But I didn't blow up. I didn't accuse her. I did something far more terrifying. I started having dinners with her parents. Inviting her brother over for poker. Took her dad fishing and listened to his rants about politics and cholesterol. Her mom adored me, always had. I leaned into it. Became the perfect son-in-law. Told them how much I loved their daughter. How I hoped we could get past this rough patch she was going through. Her mom would nod, eyes glistening, squeezing my hand like I was some wounded soldier hanging on to a crumbling marriage. I wasn't. I was just laying the foundation. I made sure to play it slow. Subtle. Never too sweet. Just enough to make them notice how cold she'd gotten. How distracted. Unreachable. I'd make small, concerned comments. "She's been so tired lately," or "She's working so much, I hardly see her." Enough to spark curiosity. Meanwhile, she started slipping more. Forgot dates. Showed up late. Snapped at her dad during dinner when he brought up something I'd confided in him. The cracks were growing, and I was just watching, measuring, calculating. She thought I was pulling away emotionally, when in fact, I was getting closer to everyone but her. Her own family started asking if she was okay, if she was happy. She said she was fine, but they didn't believe her anymore. And that's all I needed. One night, her mom called me after a Sunday dinner my wife bailed on again, said she was worried about her, that maybe she was going through something. I told her gently, "I think she is too, but I don't want to pressure her." That phone call was the first domino. Her mother started dropping little comments. So did her brother. One day, her dad even asked her if she was cheating. She flipped out, yelled, stormed out. I stayed silent. I always stayed silent. Because I wanted her to feel the heat not from me, but from the people she thought would always have her back. And it worked. God, it worked so well it was almost sad. Almost. She started pulling away faster, thinking the whole world was turning against her. I comforted her. Said I loved her. Said I just wanted her to be happy, even if that meant without me. That line? That was the bullet. Within 2 weeks, she was sitting across from me at our kitchen table, saying maybe we'd grown apart, maybe we weren't aligned anymore. I held her hand. Said, "If that's how you feel, I won't stop you." I smiled. And when she left that night, convinced it was her own idea to end it all, she had no idea she just walked out of a house I was about to legally keep, financed by a joint account I'd drained the week before, backed by a family that now saw me as the wounded party. She thought she was choosing freedom. What she actually chose was exile. They say love changes over time, that the butterflies settle, the fire becomes warmth, and the honeymoon fades into something quieter, more secure. I believed that. I welcomed it. I thought what we had was evolving, maturing, like a fine wine or an old tree with deeper roots. I never imagined that silence could mean something was rotting beneath the bark. At first, everything seemed good. We still kissed goodnight, made dinner together, watched our shows in bed. I bought her that ridiculous smart garden she wanted so she could grow basil and lavender indoors, things she'd always talked about but never actually did. She smiled when I surprised her with it, hugged me, even whispered, "You're the best." But I swear it didn't land. Her arms were around me, but her eyes were already somewhere else. I dismissed it. Long week at work, maybe. Everyone gets distracted sometimes. But then the dinners started becoming quieter. She'd play with her food, scrolling her phone, not laughing at my jokes the way she used to. I tried new recipes, thinking maybe I'd win her back with food. She used to call me her personal chef. Now it was just, I'm not that hungry. Or worse, I already ate. Already ate? Where? With who? She started dressing differently too. Not bad. Not scandalous. Just newer. Like she was putting on a costume for a role I wasn't part of. Long coats, heels, bold lipstick, even perfume she'd never worn before, richer, deeper, unfamiliar. One night, she came home late, said she went to a networking event. When I asked where, she hesitated for a second too long before saying, downtown, at that wine bar. I smiled. Said nothing. I had driven past that place earlier on my way back from the gym. It was closed for renovations. But I didn't say anything because I wasn't ready for the answer. And she knew it. She started throwing around words like boundaries and self-actualization. Told me she wanted to explore her independence. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't dramatic. Just little cuts, like 1,000 paper slices. She started keeping a journal, one she kept hidden in the bottom drawer of her desk, locked. She never locked anything before. When I asked what she was writing about, she just smiled and said, thoughts. Ideas. You wouldn't get it. Like I was an outsider in my own marriage. Then came the purchases. Not big ones. Just new books, online courses, a yoga retreat in Sedona she won through a raffle at work. No confirmation email, no proof, just a weekend she couldn't explain fully. Her phone, once left lying carelessly around the house, now followed her like a shadow. Face down. Silent mode. Password changed. Privacy is healthy, she said once when I glanced at it. Not my privacy. Just hers. She changed her social media too. Not dramatically. Just little things. A new profile picture that didn't include me. A life update post about her new chapter, vague enough to mean anything, pointed enough to mean something. When I asked why I couldn't see her stories anymore, she claimed it was a glitch. Instagram glitching for exactly one person, me. Got it. She stopped talking about the future. No more mentions of trips we'd planned. No more discussions about starting a family. When her friend had a baby, I said, "Can you imagine us doing that in a few years?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Maybe. If I'm still the same person by then." What the hell was that supposed to mean? She started disappearing for hours on end, always with vague justifications. I needed air. Went to the bookstore. Took the long way home. Her car started smelling like a new cologne, one I didn't wear. I asked if she bought a new air freshener. She nodded too quickly, like she'd rehearsed the lie. I checked the passenger seatbelt once, still warm. She hadn't driven alone. And then there was the gum wrapper I found wedged under the seat. Cinnamon. She hated cinnamon. Called it the devil's spice. But there it was, crumpled and tossed like a souvenir from a life I wasn't invited to. Still, I didn't confront her. I told myself relationships had seasons. Maybe this was just winter. I wanted to believe, wanted to trust that this wasn't what it looked like. I still kissed her goodnight, even when she turned her head slightly so my lips landed on her cheek instead. I still made her coffee in the mornings, even when she started preferring the cafe down the street. I even told her I loved her one night, after she came back late again, eyes glassy, lips a little too red. She looked at me like I'd said something foreign. Not cruel. Just confused. Like I was interrupting a different script. And in that moment, I felt it, that quiet, cold hum of the truth, pressing at the edges of my brain, whispering that the life I thought we had was slipping away. Not in a crash. Not in a scream. Just quietly, like a tide pulling everything I loved out to sea while I stood there smiling, pretending the waves were just part of the view. It was a Tuesday. That detail sticks with me, not because Tuesdays are special, but because they're supposed to be the most forgettable day of the week. Just ordinary. Predictable. Like her lies used to be. I had come home early from work, which wasn't planned, At least, not for her. She thought I had a client dinner downtown, and I let her believe it. I walked in quietly, didn't announce myself, just let the soft click of the front door seal behind me like the quiet close of a vault. The lights were off in the hallway, a single lamp flickering in the living room. Her coat was on the floor. Not draped. Dropped. Like she was too distracted or too desperate to bother. I heard her voice before I saw her. Not raised. Not laughing. Just low. Breathless. And not the way she talks to me. I moved toward the sound like a surgeon, precise, clinical, already detaching from the scene I hadn't even seen yet. The bedroom door was open a crack. Just enough to frame her silhouette, curled on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear, hand tangled in her own hair like a teenager. Her voice was honey-slicked, lazy, soaked in a kind of hunger I hadn't heard in years. And then she said it. God, I wish I could just fall asleep in your arms tonight. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Soft, full of longing, the kind of tone she used to use when we first fell in love, back when she'd curl into me after sex and trace circles on my chest. Now she sounded like she was whispering it into someone else's skin. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. Just stood there, 10 feet away from the death of my marriage, heartbeat flatlining into a numb, cold rhythm. She giggled next. Not the fake polite laugh she gave at work parties or the sharp bark she used when she was trying to win an argument. No, this one was real. Intimate. Familiar in a way that made me sick. And then came the phrase that shattered everything. No, he has no idea. He's still so sweet. I almost feel bad. Almost. She said it like I was a child she'd tricked out of his favorite toy. Not with hatred. Worse, with pity. I backed away slowly, silently, as if the floor might creak and betray me, like the truth she just vomited into the air without hesitation. I went into the guest bathroom, closed the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked exactly the same as I had that morning. But something was gone. Something crucial. I didn't feel pain. Or rage. Not even heartbreak. Just this cold, clinical awareness that the woman I had trusted, protected, built a life with, was now a stranger wearing her face. I sat on the closed toilet lid, pulled out my phone, and opened our bank account. Then the joint credit card. The travel points. The subscriptions. I started building a list. Not out of emotion. Out of instinct. Like a man stranded in a frozen wilderness inventorying matches. Because this wasn't a marriage anymore, it was a battlefield. And I wasn't about to be the one caught unarmed. I didn't confront her that night. When she emerged from the bedroom later, I was already in the kitchen, sipping tea like I had just come back from my non-existent dinner meeting. She smiled, kissed my cheek, asked how it went. I said it was fine. She talked about her book club, which now I knew was just code for someone else's bed. She made herself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and started scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just dismantled the foundation of our life with a single sentence. I watched her from the kitchen, every gesture now part of a puzzle I had almost solved. The way she smiled at her screen. The casual little sighs. The occasional flick of her hair like she was still performing for someone who wasn't me. I felt nothing. Just this rising clarity that whatever game she was playing, I was now a part of it, but not in the way she thought. She had declared war without even knowing it. And I was going to let her win every battle until she got cocky. Until she thought she'd already won. Until she packed her bags with pride and walked out thinking she'd outgrown me, outplayed me, outloved me. And then, when the dust had settled, when she finally looked back to find the wreckage she'd left behind, I'd be gone, but not empty. I'd be standing on the ashes, untouched, holding everything she thought she'd taken with her. Because that night, when she called another man home, she didn't just cheat. She gave me permission to burn it all down, methodically, silently, and smile while doing it. I became invisible, not in the literal sense, but in the way a man becomes part of the furniture when everyone assumes he's too naive, too trusting, too passive to see what's in front of him. That's what she thought of me now. An afterthought. Background noise. And I leaned into it like a master of disguise. Every smile I gave her was a mask. Every nod, every "I love you" was a chess move made 3 turns ahead. She didn't know that while she was laughing into her phone behind locked doors, I was mapping her every step. It started with something simple. A calendar event she forgot to delete. Meeting. Wellness coaching for PM. I asked casually how her session went. She blinked. Said, "Great. Really grounding. But I'd called the place earlier that day. No appointment. No record. No coach." So I told her I was ordering her favorite Thai food and had it delivered to the wellness center's address. I waited for the delivery guy to call. Nobody here by that name, he said. I told him to keep the food. My appetite was for something else now. Next, I asked a buddy from college, one she never met, to create a fake Instagram profile. Attractive. Intellectual. Just enough edge to trigger curiosity. He followed her. 2 hours later, she followed back. 1 day later, she liked 3 of his photos. 2 days after that, she replied to his story. He sent her a playful message. She replied in less than 5 minutes. Nothing sexual. Nothing overt. But her tone, the flirtatious undertone, the casual dismissal of me, was enough. Marriage is complicated, she wrote. You can love someone and still feel stuck. That line should have gutted me. Instead, I copied the screenshot and saved it to a folder titled Dismantle. I knew better than to tell her myself. People make mistakes when they follow emotion. So I did something smarter. I started tracking her through the one person she always lied about, her best friend Kayla. Girls' night with Kayla, she'd say, always with a wink like she deserved a little escape. So I went through Kayla's social media, public, careless, full of stories. One night, my wife left the house in jeans and a sweater. Said it was movie night. 2 hours later, Kayla posted a story from her couch, just her, a bottle of wine, and her dog. No extra voices in the background. No laughter. Just a bored woman watching The Notebook alone. I screen recorded the story and tagged it with the date and time. Meanwhile, the Find My iPhone app I'd installed under the guise of shared safety showed my wife's location bouncing between a restaurant and a building that looked suspiciously like an apartment complex. I looked up the address. Short-term luxury rentals. The kind business travelers or cheating spouses love. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I began planting questions like landmines. How was Kayla's dog? I asked one morning, just to see what she'd say. She blinked, then smiled. So cute, he kept trying to sit on me during the movie. Lie. I didn't flinch. Just kissed her forehead. You should take a picture next time. She nodded like I'd given her homework. A few days later, I checked our joint account. I had long stopped sharing mine with her, but the joint one, the one she used for groceries and gas, had a new charge. Flowers. A boutique florist. I called the store and said I needed to confirm a delivery. Oh, yes, the woman chirped. We delivered a romantic bouquet to Liam, the note said. Thanks for making me feel alive again. Alive. That was the word she used when she talked about our honeymoon. When she cried in Rome, said she'd never felt more alive. I felt nothing now. Just a sharpening inside me. A blade being honed. I started saving screenshots, email receipts, tracking data. I bought a burner phone and created a fake email address. I began setting up fake accounts in her name. Small ones. Subscription services. Free trials. Just enough to collect digital footprints. I wasn't trying to hurt her. Not yet. I was just laying the groundwork. Building a timeline. Documenting every detail. Every betrayal. Every omission. I wanted to know not just that she lied, but how she did it. Her patterns. Her tells. The way she covered one lie with another. I watched her body language. Noted every twitch. Every blink. Every time she licked her lips before answering. It became a science. A study. I knew more about her than she did herself. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still said she loved me at night. Still played the role of wife, even as she slipped further into someone else's bed. But she didn't realize she wasn't the only one playing a role. And while she was building a fantasy out of deceit, I was building a case. Not for the police. Not for court. For me. For the moment when I would detonate it all. And when that day came, there would be no shouting. No begging. No drama. Just a quiet unraveling of everything she thought she controlled. Because she wasn't living a double life. She was living inside mine. And I was the architect of her ending. She always liked Thursdays, something about the rhythm of it, the almost weekend energy, the fake freedom in the air. So when I suggested we go out for dinner, somewhere special, she agreed too quickly, like a woman trying to reassert her image of innocence. I picked the place carefully. A rooftop restaurant with panoramic city views, the kind of spot you'd post on Instagram with some trite caption like feeling grateful. She wore red, tight, confident, the kind of dress that screams control. Her smile was calculated, her eyes scanning me across the table like she was searching for clues I hadn't left yet. She ordered wine. I let her talk. She talked about work. About maybe taking a solo trip to reset. She even asked if we were okay. I said, of course we are. And then I nodded to the waiter, who brought over a tablet. Not a menu. A screen. I reached across the table and pressed play. Her face turned toward it casually, expecting some romantic surprise. Instead, she saw herself in a lobby, laughing, hair undone, hand in hand with a man she once described as just a colleague. The timestamp was last Friday. The location, out of town. The trip, she said, was a mandatory team-building weekend. There were 5 clips. Her hugging him, her kissing him, her unlocking a hotel room door, her slipping inside with him, never once looking back. The last video was just the closed door, blinking under a hallway light. The screen went black. The silence that followed was surgical. She didn't speak at first, just blinked, swallowed, reached for her wine like maybe she could wash the moment away with Pinot Noir. "It's not what you think," she said eventually, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. I tilted my head. "What do I think?" She blinked again. "We didn't sleep together," she added, faster now. "It wasn't. I mean, it got emotional, but it's complicated." I let her speak. I wanted to hear how deep the rabbit hole went. "He understands me," she said. "It was just a connection, not an affair." "A connection." I nodded slowly. "So you kissed your connection goodbye before entering a room together for 6 hours?" Her eyes narrowed. "You were spying on me?" There it was, deflection. The classic pivot. "You invaded my privacy." I didn't flinch. "You forfeited it." She leaned back, folding her arms. "Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed anyone else." And there it was, blame. I watched her flip the script, page by page, like an actress sticking to her monologue. "You're always so calm," she continued. "So cold." I needed passion. I needed to feel seen. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the layers peeling off. Beneath the makeup, beneath the defiance, was panic. She was testing responses, trying to find the one that would unlock my forgiveness. But I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I said, "You know, I used to think your silence was peace. Now I realize it was just the sound of you planning my replacement." That shut her up. For a second, something cracked in her expression. Her lips parted like she might cry, but no tears came. Then she laughed. Short, sharp. "You're being dramatic," she scoffed. "It wasn't love. It was a fling. And he's nothing compared to what we had." I leaned forward, kept my voice low. "Then why does your heart break every time I speak the truth?" She stared at me like she didn't recognize who was sitting across from her anymore. Good. Because the man she thought she'd betrayed silently was gone. What sat before her now was the reckoning. "You didn't just cheat," I said. "You emptied the room where trust used to live and invited someone else to lie down in it." She went pale. The confidence started to drain. The weight of what I knew, what I'd seen, what I let her walk into, it was crushing her now. Her jaw tightened. "So what? What now?" she asked, the edge creeping in. "Are you going to leave me? Ruin me? Be the cold bastard everyone warned me about?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. The woman who once told me I made her feel safe now looked like she was bracing for impact. "What happens now?" she asked again, but softer this time. Smaller. I reached for my glass, sipped the wine she had chosen, and said nothing. The city lights danced behind her. Our plates were untouched. Our story, unraveling silently between courses. And still, I didn't leave. I just sat there, watching her unravel, knowing she had no idea that the worst part hadn't even begun. The silence between us stretched into something heavy, dense, like a noose tightening with each breath she took. She broke first, of course. They always do. "You know what? Maybe this is a good thing," she snapped, her voice sharp and brittle like a cracked wine glass. "Maybe we needed this wake-up call." She tried to sit up straighter, act composed, but her fingers trembled as they wrapped around her wine glass. "You weren't exactly a thrilling husband, you know. Predictable. Dull. I had to carry the passion for both of us." I watched her, eyes calm, expression unreadable. She waited for a reaction. Got none. That's when she leaned in, venom starting to bubble beneath her skin. "You smothered me. Always so goddamn calm, so in control. Like I was some bird in a gilded cage." She laughed, dry fake. What kind of man doesn't notice his wife slipping away until it's too late? Still, I said nothing. Just watched her unravel, watched the seams split. She slammed her glass down, the clink sharp against the table. "Say something. Yell. Be human for once." Her voice cracked at the edges. I leaned forward, slowly, and said, "If being a man means becoming small enough to cheat, Then thank you for reminding me who the child in this relationship really was. That hit. Her mouth opened, closed, like she wanted to spit something back, but the words got stuck in her throat. You never made me feel seen, she hissed. You made me feel safe, but like a pet. A house cat. Fed, brushed, ignored. I nodded slowly. And you ran to someone who tossed you scraps and made you beg for them. Her eyes flashed, furious and wounded, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or cry. You don't get to judge me, she growled. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own home. I tilted my head, voice low. I do now. She stood abruptly, pacing. Her heels clicked like warning shots across the floor. This is your fault too, she barked. You let this happen. You were so busy playing the perfect husband, you didn't notice I was drowning. I stayed seated. Still, colder than I'd ever allowed myself to be around her. You weren't drowning, I said. You were diving headfirst, eyes open, into a man who didn't even bother learning your last name. She flinched. That one dug deep. Good. Let it. You think you're better than me? She sneered, circling back like a shark. You think this gives you the moral high ground? Her hands were shaking now. She was losing control, her voice rising, mask slipping. You think sitting there like some emotionless robot makes you the victim? I met her eyes. No. It makes me the man who survived you. She froze. Just for a heartbeat. Like that sentence sucked the oxygen out of her lungs. Then came the pivot. You really never loved me, she whispered, the performance beginning now. Her voice softened, eyes welling with moisture. If you did, you'd be fighting for us. You'd be fighting for me. I didn't blink. I don't fight for people who set fire to the house and complain it's too warm inside. She collapsed into the seat across from me, defeated, mascara smudged, breath unsteady. I didn't mean to fall for him, she said, quieter now, reaching for sympathy. It just happened. I raised an eyebrow. Like a car accident. Except you bought the keys, gassed it up, and drove it straight through us. Her mouth twisted into something bitter. She was trying to decide whether she should cry harder or flip the table. You're so cold, she muttered. You used to care. Where did that man go? I stared at her for a long time. He died the night you started practicing someone else's name in our bed. Her hands curled into fists, knuckles white, rage and grief battling behind her eyes. You'll never find someone who loved you like I did, she said, low, trembling. You'll end up alone, with your precious dignity. I smiled faintly. That's the difference between us. You loved with conditions. I loved with faith. And now, I'll live with peace. She laughed bitterly. Peace? You think this is peace? Her voice cracked again. You're broken. Just too frozen to admit it. I leaned in one last time, let my words cut through whatever illusion she was clinging to. No. You broke me. But the thing about broken men? We don't cry. We rebuild. And when we're done, you won't even recognize what you destroyed. She stared at me, lips parted, unable to speak, because she finally understood none of her tricks worked anymore. The guilt, the rage, the tears, the seduction, it all bounced off like rain on stone. She hadn't just lost control. She'd lost access. And that terrified her more than any revenge I could plan. Because now, she wasn't in a fight. She was alone in a room with a man who had already walked away. He just hadn't stood up yet. Revenge, for me, was never going to be some dramatic explosion. No slammed doors or screaming matches or public spectacles. I wasn't interested in fireworks. I wanted erosion, slow and silent, like a tide carving stone into nothing over time. She still thought I was processing, healing, licking invisible wounds in some quiet corner of the house. But I wasn't healing, I was constructing. I started with the evidence. Organized every screenshot, every text message, every video clip from my carefully installed apartment cam into neat digital folders. I cataloged timestamps, locations, faces. I logged the hotel receipts I'd pulled from our joint credit card. She never noticed the paperless billing change. Every romantic charge, every suspicious rideshare route, it was all there, in black and white. I hired an online notary to verify the document's authenticity and had every file backed up to 3 separate cloud accounts, one under my own name, one under a pseudonym, and one mailed, yes, mailed, to a trusted friend in another state, just in case she ever got smart and tried to accidentally destroy my devices. Once the digital walls were built, I moved to finances. I had already separated my personal funds years ago, but now I pulled everything I legally could from the joint accounts, my paycheck redirected, savings drained, investment accounts split. I left her enough to keep her from noticing right away, like a frog boiling in a pot. Then I began revoking her access, passwords changed, Joint credit cards canceled. The emergency card she thought she could rely on now flagged for fraud. I rerouted the bills, electric, gas, water, internet, all into my name. Then I shut them down one by one at the rental apartment I discovered she was using, under the guise of energy efficiency. I reclaimed the car. Legally mine. She had always driven it more, so she assumed it was hers. But the title, insurance, and registration? All filed under my name since day one. I picked it up from the apartment lot using the spare key she forgot I had, and I parked it in a friend's garage across town. She called the police. I had already filed a report 2 hours earlier claiming it was being misused without consent. They sided with me. Next came the legal process. Quietly. Strategically. I retained a lawyer, not flashy, not loud, just sharp and precise. We filed for divorce, listing adultery and financial misconduct as grounds. In our state, that meant the prenup she pushed so hard for could be challenged. She had bragged once, too drunk to filter, that she only signed it because she knew how to play the long game. Turns out, so did I. The documents were served to her at work, in front of her boss, with a printed package containing select screenshots of her behavior, nothing explicit, just enough to raise eyebrows. Her boss, a married woman with 2 kids, called me later that night to apologize for what I'd endured. I never asked her to do anything. But a week later, I heard through the grapevine that my wife was put on leave pending an internal ethics review. I reached out to her parents next, calmly, respectfully. I didn't beg for their support. I simply sent them a curated summary of the affair's timeline, evidence of the financial deception, and a brief letter that read, "I thought you should know who you've been defending." Her father called me, voice shaking, and said, "I don't know who my daughter is anymore." Her mother cried. I said nothing more. Just let their own heartbreak become another weight on her crumbling foundation. Friends were next. Mutuals. Her bridesmaids. People who had celebrated us, posted our wedding photos, cheered our anniversaries. I never asked them to take sides. I simply sent them the truth. Quietly. Respectfully. No rage. Just facts. Screenshots. Time logs. They responded with silence, or with words like, "I'm so sorry," and she told us it was different. The final step came with the apartment. She thought she was clever, signing the lease in her own name, paying with our joint card. But I had access to her email when she left logged in on our shared tablet. I used it to contact the landlord, inquired about unauthorized occupants, then forwarded everything to my attorney. She was served with a cease and desist notice for violating cohabitation rules. Her little love nest collapsed in 48 hours. She still didn't know the full extent. She kept texting me vague messages, "Can we talk?" and "You're being cruel." I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to see the message bubble stay empty. That void was its own answer. Every move was made with intent. Every piece of her life slowly peeled away. Not violently. Elegantly. Strategically. I let her think she had time to explain, to negotiate, to twist the story into something redeemable. But by the time she realized the floor beneath her was gone, I'd already built my new life elsewhere, brick by brick, untouched by her chaos. The moment she betrayed me, she lit a fuse. I didn't stomp it out. I let it burn down her security, her story, her illusions. She wanted power. She wanted escape. So I gave her both. I let her escape into nothing. And I took all the power with me. It happened at her sister's engagement party, of all places, an upscale event at a glass-walled rooftop venue downtown, strung with fairy lights and filled with the kind of people who spoke in soft tones and sipped overpriced champagne like they were born doing it. She invited me weeks earlier, back when she was still trying to pretend we were working through things, trying to control the narrative before I could say otherwise. I said yes, of course. Smiled, kissed her cheek, told her I was proud of how far she'd come. I arrived alone, tailored suit, polished shoes, calm as a ghost. She was already there, floating through the crowd in a silk dress like she hadn't spent the last year constructing her own gallows. Her family welcomed me like I'd never left, her father clasping my hand, her mother hugging me too tightly. Her sister beamed and thanked me for coming. But the temperature began to shift when I started speaking, just briefly, just enough. A nod here, a comment there. "She must have told you about the hotel?" I said to her cousin. "Oh, no? Strange." She said it was a family weekend. To her uncle, "I think it's brave how she's redefining loyalty." The words were never sharp, just subtle, planted like seeds. I didn't need to shout. I just needed ears to open. I watched the slow unraveling like an architect watching a demolition, measured, timed, precise. One by one, faces began to change. Smiles flattened. Conversations paused when she passed. Her sister pulled her aside after someone showed her a photo, the one of my wife, half-dressed, tangled in another man's lap in the hotel lobby. I had never posted it, but I'd uploaded it to a hidden folder on a shared drive months ago, made sure it was accessible with just the right link, and then, well, people are curious creatures. Her best friend, Kayla, who once covered for her, crossed the room toward me and hugged me so tightly I felt her guilt pour out like static. "I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered. I said nothing, just nodded. I knew she'd turned when I saw her take my wife aside, whisper something to her, and then walk away without waiting for a reply. That was the first fracture. The next came when her father approached her during the toast, his face pale, his phone clenched in his hand. She tried to speak, but he just shook his head. Quiet. Ashamed. And then he walked away too. Her mother followed. She stood alone now, near the bar, trying to force smiles onto strangers who no longer smiled back. I stayed across the room, drink in hand, saying nothing. Her lover was supposed to meet her after the party. He'd even booked a room in a hotel across town. But I'd already gotten to him. Days ago, I sent him a copy of the videos. I told him who I was, what she was. He blocked her by the time appetizers were served. She kept checking her phone, swiping, frowning, red rising in her cheeks. She tried to laugh it off, make jokes about the awkward energy, but no one was laughing. Her voice cracked. Her lipstick smeared. I saw her make eye contact with me across the room, just once. And that's when her smile died. Because I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I just stared back, calm, still, unmoved, like a man who had already survived the storm and was now watching the wreckage wash ashore. She walked toward me like a puppet with strings fraying, her heels wobbling on the wooden floor, her glass trembling in her hand. "What did you do?" she hissed under her breath, trying to hold her smile for the people still watching. "I didn't do anything," I replied, voice low. "You did this. I just gave them a front row seat." Her face twitched, anger, fear, shame colliding behind her eyes. "You're enjoying this," she spat. I tilted my head. "No, I'm just not apologizing for it." Her hand tightened around the glass like she wanted to throw it, but she didn't have the nerve. She tried one more time, softer now, her voice pleading. "We can fix this. If you just stop, if you just tell them it was a misunderstanding." I cut her off with a single look. She saw it. The finality. The quiet certainty that nothing could be undone. And right there, under the soft golden lights, surrounded by the family and friends who once adored her, she broke. Her lip quivered, her eyes glazed, and then her whole body seemed to shrink under the weight of it. She wasn't crying yet, but the tears were just behind her breath, waiting to fall. She turned around, tried to walk away, but the crowd parted like the sea, not out of reverence, but out of revulsion. No one wanted to touch the collapse. No one wanted to be part of her aftermath. I stood still. I didn't follow her. I didn't smirk. I just watched. And she saw me watching. That was the moment. Not the evidence. Not the whispers. Not the empty messages or blocked calls. That was what destroyed her, the realization that I was still there, still standing, still unbroken, while everything she built on deceit crumbled at her feet. She wanted me to be furious, devastated, ruined. But I was free. And she was the one left picking up pieces of a mask no one believed in anymore. It happened 3 days after the engagement party, at a Sunday brunch her parents had invited me to, out of habit, or maybe guilt. I didn't ask. I arrived late on purpose, just enough to make them shift in their seats, to make her wonder if I was coming at all. The table was already full, her parents, her younger sister, a few of our old mutual friends, and one man I didn't recognize at first, until I saw the way she flinched when I entered, and he looked down at his plate like it owed him an apology. Him. The affair partner. I smiled, took the seat across from her, and said nothing. Just watched. She was trying to play the host, laughing too loud, over-explaining the menu, but her voice cracked every time our eyes met. Her mother barely looked at her. Her father sipped his coffee like it was the only thing keeping him from exploding. The air was brittle. Then she said it too loudly, too quickly. "It's good to have you here. I think we all need closure, right? Closure." Like it was a group therapy session. That's when I laughed, not loud, not cruel, just sharp, like a blade being unsheathed. "Closure," I said, setting my fork down. "You think closure is breaking vows in a hotel bed and sending me the bill?" She froze. The room snapped to silence like a rubber band. The man beside her, Liam, now I remembered, shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing he'd walked into the wrong scene. She tried to recover, waving a hand. Okay, you know what? Maybe we don't do this here. Why not? I cut in. You had no problem blowing up our marriage behind everyone's backs. Why not air the wreckage in front of them too? Her eyes flared, but I didn't give her time to speak. I turned to Liam. So this is the guy? The emotional support prize she picked up while she still wore my ring. He opened his mouth, but she jumped in. Don't talk to him like that. This has nothing to do with you. And everything has to do with me, I said, voice louder now, laced with heat. Because I'm the one who got lied to. I'm the one who got cheated on while this coward stood by and pretended like he wasn't part of it. Gasps. Her sister covered her mouth. Her father stood up halfway, then sat back down, hands clenched. Her mom whispered something to the woman beside her. She stood too now, arms stiff. You don't get to ruin a family meal just because you ruined a family, I snapped back. Let's not pretend this is about food. This is about lies. This is about the fact that you tore through every promise you made and expected me to sit down and smile about it. She was red now, shaking, her voice starting to break. You don't know what I was going through. You don't know what it felt like to sleep next to a man who stopped seeing me. I saw you, I shot back. I saw you every day and chose to stay. You saw me and still chose to betray. The table was pure chaos now. Her father tried to intervene. Maybe we should step outside. No, I said, without looking at him. Let everyone hear. Let them all see who she really is when the mask comes off. Her voice cracked again. You think you're better than me? You think this makes you some kind of hero? I leaned forward, slow, deliberate. No, I don't need to be a hero. I just need the truth to speak louder than your performance. She snapped, then voice raised, wild. You're not a victim. You're a control freak. You never let me breathe. I had to lie because if I told you how empty I felt, you'd make it my fault. No, I said coldly. You lied because it was easier than growing up. You lied because you thought love meant being adored without accountability. But guess what? Love without truth is just manipulation dressed in sentiment. The room fell dead silent again. She tried to stand but knocked over her glass, water spilling across the table like a broken dam. This is insane, she gasped, eyes darting, voice cracking. You're insane, you cheated, I said, louder now, standing too. You cheated and lied and let me rot in silence while you built another life behind my back. And now you're angry because the spotlight finally turned back on you. She was crying now, mascara streaking, voice hoarse. I loved you, she whispered, barely audible. You loved the comfort, I said. You loved the safety. But when it asked for commitment, you ran to a man who didn't know the weight of sacrifice. And now? Now you're just another woman who threw away gold for glass and can't tell the difference anymore. People were whispering, phones out, someone filming. I didn't care. I turned to Liam, who stood now, frozen, pale. Run, if you're smart, I said quietly. She'll sell you the same dream. And when you wake up in it, it'll already be gone. He didn't reply. He just left, fast, head down. She reached out for him as he passed. He didn't even look back. I looked around the table one last time, at the faces who once clapped at our wedding, now watching her cry into trembling hands, her world reduced to spilled drinks and exposed truth. I didn't touch her. I didn't need to. I just walked away, past her friends, her family, her wreckage, without a single word more. And that silence? It was the loudest thing in the room. It didn't take long for the world she built on fantasy and deception to crumble into something cold and unrecognizable. The company let her go under the guise of restructuring, but everyone knew it was about the affair, about the whispers that started after her little rendezvous videos surfaced in the inboxes of key coworkers. Her spotless image was stained, her colleagues distanced themselves, and HR scrubbed her name from the website like she never existed. Her best friend stopped replying. Her so-called inner circle vanished overnight. The only people who stayed were the ones who needed gossip fuel, who smiled with teeth and walked away snickering behind her back. The affair partner? Gone. No goodbye, no closure, no explanation. The moment the convenience and secrecy disappeared, so did he. Blocked her number, deleted their photos, moved on like she was never more than a thrill between spreadsheets and cheap wine. Her family refused to speak her name. Her father, once proud and protective, wouldn't even take her calls. Her mother sent back her keys in a padded envelope without a note. Her sister uninvited her from the wedding. Word spread faster than wildfire in our town. Neighbors who used to wave now closed their blinds. Mothers clutched their kids tighter at the grocery store. Her gym membership was revoked due to disruption. The barista who once knew her order stopped making eye contact. Even her dog, technically mine, refused to go near her when she tried to visit. She moved out of state, tried to restart, working behind a counter at some cafe in a city where no one asked questions. But even anonymity has a price, and for her, it was the silence. The deafening, lonely silence of a life where nobody missed her. Then came the messages. The slow, pitiful descent. It started with a simple hey. Then, I just wanted to talk. Then paragraphs. Walls of text. Apologies, excuses, half-truths, promises. I was lost. I was scared. You were the only real thing I ever had. One night, I got a message that simply read, I still love you. I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. She showed up a week later. At my door. Pale, thinner, older somehow. Like her betrayal had drained the youth from her bones. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, eyes glossy, hands shaking, lips trembling like the words were afraid of being said aloud. I was stupid, she whispered. I didn't think I could lose you for real. I said nothing. You were everything. I know that now. Still, I said nothing. Please, she begged. I don't care about the past. I just want a second chance. That's when I looked her in the eyes, really looked, and I didn't see my wife. I didn't see the woman I married. I saw the ghost of someone who made her choice long ago. Someone who thought love was infinite. That forgiveness was automatic. That time would somehow erase the cracks she carved with her own hands. I said 6 words. Calm. Clear. Final. I'd rather be alone than with you. She broke then. Fell to her knees like her legs gave out. But I didn't kneel beside her. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't even close the door. I just turned and walked back inside. Because closure isn't something you give, it's something you become. And I had already become everything she thought I never could be, unreachable, untouchable, and free. Thank you for listening to my story. Where are you from? Did it hit the way you expected, or even harder?